Hello.
Hi.
I am snuggled up in my bed, as you can tell.
Hey, how are you? Uh-oh, what happened to Lachelle?
Yeah. I was very sick yesterday, so I'm still recovering. So I'm like,
Oh,
I was stomach upset, throwing up. I didn't leave my bedroom all day. So
well, that kind
I've
of
been
sucks.
yeah, I've been out and about today, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going back to my room.
Okay, let me make sure I was at the doctor's office and just got back, so let me make sure that I didn't get a text from Pam or okay, I'm gonna text Pam and Kathy because I know Pam said she was gonna be here. Oh, here comes Pam.
Look at you. I know that
Lachelle,
Hi.
beach
you
top
look
when I see one.
What was that?
I know that beach top when I see one.
That's right.
where are you at these days?
Right now, I'm in my backyard. I have client stuff, and so I had 1.5 hours. So here, I'll show you my little setup. Let's see if I can do this. Hold on.
So you have a pool.
Yeah. So this is my office.
Oh, I love
So
it.
No.
Underneath there, like you did in Costa Rica. That's great.
yeah. So I'm like, all right, it's not very nice in Minnesota for very long, and it's going to be crappy the next couple days. So I decided to come out here and work. So yeah,
I do not blame you.
Work.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
I like it.
Hi, Pam.
Hey there. How's everybody doing?
Well, that's a good question. That's what we're gonna get ready to do. I just texted Kathy to see if she was coming.
Kara,
Um,
are you in bed because you're not feeling well?
I
mhm.
was super sick yesterday. Yes, I was. I think my body decided that it was going to just like take all the busyness and stress and take me out. So, I'm recovered like 75% today. But
And
Oh,
so
that's
how's
good.
all your stuff going with Cinnaholic and home, whatever it's called?
so very ironic that yesterday, I mean, I got sick at 3 a.m. My stomach was cramping. I could not stand up straight. I threw up at 7:30. I threw up at noon. And yesterday was the day that Mark and I were scheduled to go to the Amazon station to tell his team that we're shutting down the business. And so he had to go do that without me. Like there was no way I could get out of bed.
Mhm.
So he had to do that. And that wasn't his favorite either. He likes to have his wife around. Um, but I don't,
Super good opportunity for him, though, right? To
yeah,
grow.
Yeah.
yes. That's why I was like, oh, the good Lord is doing something there.
And how did the announcement go?
N Not great. I mean, I think when I told my team, they had seen other companies leave in that station, so they kind of like had seen it happen elsewhere. Maybe they knew. And so, and we were really quick to say, like, hey, here's some other great people, switch over there. And our drivers are like, we don't want to work for anybody else here in Fort Wayne. They're like, nope, this is it. We don't want to go anywhere else. Okay. But he's got a lot of people with a lot of longevity. So there was a lot of emotions, a lot of people who feel like they are part of a team for the first time. And which is so frustrating. Let's say that's frustrating me because Amazon sucks so much,
Mhm.
but we've somehow managed to still create a really good team in the midst of that. So that's something we'll take away from that. But so it didn't go great, but it went. So August 29th is the last day, which Lachelle, I know we talked about not making a decision until September 1st, but like I made the decision and we'll be done by September 1st. How's that?
Amazing.
That's how
Amazing.
the mind works.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
Cinnaholic, man, I'm just waiting for the building inspectors to come and they're driving me out of my mind. So we'll probably be shutting down the DSP the same week that we're opening, like legit same week, and that is too much to have in the same week, but that's just what it's going to be. So I have to like and just we're just going to go with it. So,
I like the way you're looking at that.
yep.
Okay.
And I'll give one more thing is that I gave the hiring for the Cinnaholic team to Sydney and Peyton, and they have everybody hired. Like we have our starting crew ready to go. And I haven't met or interviewed a single person. So
Yay. Congratulations, my dear.
I know it's a big deal.
Pretty
So,
awesome.
That's
Okay, thank
awesome.
you for the update. Pass it on to one of your colleagues for an update from them.
all right, Miss Outdoor Lachelle.
Yeah, I just need to take advantage of every single thing. Okay, so I just got to tell you something kind of funny personal wise, but new carpet has been on my vision board for a couple of years. And they're installing it right now. Like and I
Yay.
know that sounds like not a big deal, but you guys legit, like it's the entire basement and 2 rooms upstairs, and it's a lot of money. And my husband was so resistant because he's like, the kids and the dog are just gonna wreck it. And I'm like, I don't want to sit around for 6 more years and wait for my daughter to graduate. So I don't know, man. Somehow, some miracle happened. Hell froze over and we have new carpet installing right now.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thanks.
And how many bedrooms is that place in Costa Rica that you found, or Dominican Republic?
God, you know what? I'm gonna have to look. I was thinking about that today. I'm like, that's coming up really fast. And yeah, that's another thing. So I had somebody that was supposed to come, had to back out because her husband lost his job. And so she's like, Lachelle, I just can't. And so I'm like, that's fine. So I wanted to reallocate the money that I had set aside for her scholarship. And I've had such a great response that I'm narrowing it down this week. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so I don't know. I'm gonna have to look because I would love to even invite another person. I think I just have to make sure I have enough room. So yeah.
That's awesome. It looks like a gorgeous place.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know
Yeah.
for my future masterminds too, by the way.
Yeah, no, of course. I would definitely recommend the Costa Rican house that we've used in the past. I will probably go back to that one. And so I'll let you know about this one.
Awesome. Thank you.
So yeah,
Okay. Pass it on. Quick update from everybody before
All
we
right. All right, Pam.
Ooh, I don't know that I have much of an update since the last time we talked. I feel like it's just been
Yes, you do.
business
You've
as
been
usual.
working out. You've been.
That's true. That's true. I'm on week 2 now of my recommitment to myself of working out 4 days a week minimally and keeping my journal every day. I found a journaling app so I can like journal real quick from my phone at any given point. I can either free write or use one of the templates. And so I've got an AM template, a PM template, and a fitness template that I use to capture information, and that's been going really well. So I've lost a couple pounds, and this week I haven't lost anything yet, but it's been a really rough period week. I have still kept my like eating habits okay, but tonight is my son's 21st birthday, and so we're going. He wants to go to a beer garden for dinner, so I have to have a beer with. I don't have to have a beer with him, but I'm going to have a beer with him because it's the first legal beer he can have.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Abraham Hicks says that it's only bad for us if we believe it's bad for us.
Right.
And I feel like, you know, if I'm doing it for a good reason, right? Like a celebration or whatever, it's not bad for me.
No,
It's
And
you
good
know,
or bad is only the universal law of, like we only place value on it. So it's not good or bad.
right. I mean, in comparison to my goals, it's not going to further my goals. And so if I think of good or bad in terms of that, it's bad in terms of it's not going to get me closer to my goal. However, I also feel like the 80-20 rule is much more applicable to most things. And so if I'm, you know, good 80% of the time, having a beer with my son on his birthday is not going to derail me.
And I might offer up, maybe it's that not even good or bad, but just in a way, maybe it is good or bad in the fact that maybe this is good because having a beer once every couple months allows you to stay on the consistent behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now where it gets bad is, oh, well, this chocolate cake tonight or this beer tonight is going to help me tomorrow. Oh, this beer is going to help me go further. Yeah.
Yeah. My goal is to actually get healthy without cutting out anything from my life, like 100% completely that I enjoy, right? Like I don't have to never touch a Diet Coke again or never have another drink, but you know, I'm not going to cut out sugar 100% completely. Now, if I had a medical reason to do it, that would be different. But like, I'm just going to find a way to, you know, all things in moderation and still enjoy food and not be thinking all the time about what I can or can't have, and find a way to just be healthy with that, making better choices.
Perfect. Pass
Yeah.
it on, Miss Kathy. Bring us home.
Kathy.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I'm getting a new HVAC system.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also turning my car in for more repairs tomorrow. So I was running all my kayaks and stand-up paddleboards to my storage unit, and I'm like so dirty.
We can't tell.
Thank you. And it's like, um I'm just getting stuff like that done. I'm packing up and getting ready to go back to Houston. Evie's like having like she's not enrolled. She didn't go orientation as a whole. She's doing orientation for a second time, you know, just all sorts of chaos, and we're just keep jumping through the hoops, and she's picked her classes, but as soon as the hold removes, hopefully she'll be signed up. Otherwise I'll be disgruntled for having to leave here when she doesn't even have class.
So you hope for her sake.
I hope for my sake she gets enrolled so I feel better about being in Houston. And just that, and you know, so
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So today we're going to do something a little bit different in the realm that I want to talk about the 4 levels of listening. Carrie has heard this, but the 4 levels of listening. And then we're going to get into what I call a generative conversation. I have some quotes from David Nagel is his name, and he was my past coach. Is one of her mentors, and he was mentored by like the godfather of like mindset work. And anyway, so he's doing this master class. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with any of the statements that I'm going to make. And the purpose of this is to get into a generative conversation. And I'm going to explain what that means here in a second. So it's important to understand the 4 levels of listening. So the first level of listening is where you come to a conversation that, and we see a lot of that right now in politics, where you don't care what the other person has to say. You're not even really listening to it. It's more about you want to be listened to, right? Like you're sharing what you want other people to hear. The second level of listening is where you're listening to someone else, you're hearing what they're saying, but you still have an agenda. You still have your point of view that you want to get across. That's where like almost like debate comes into play, right? Because you're listening to what they're saying, but you're filtering based on what you want to defend, right? The third level of listening is, you know, if we get to that today, that's going to be good. And we'll pop into just some generative level 4 as well. But it does take practice to get into some of these. Level 3 is where we're not teaching, we're just present in the moment and we're listening to each other. And you guys have done this on some of these calls where you're like, oh, something came up for me when you were speaking about X, Y, and Z, right? Like that's a good example of level 4. Level 3 is where you come to it, you're listening to the other person. You're not listening to defend what you have. You still have opinions, but you're listening, and those opinions might shape themselves a little bit differently based on what you're discussing with the other person. Now, when you get into level 3 and level 4, it's also important, like I suggest to you to turn your phone, turn your computer to a point where you're not getting any notifications, because it will pull you out of that being present in the conversation. Level 4 is where we would sit here and I might say, oh, Pam, I see a globe behind you. That brings up for me this idea that I want to travel a lot. And I think you do too. And, and then you just have these like generative conversations where there's not, you still have some opinions, but you don't care whether or not you get to express your opinion or not. And you're really forming beliefs. And it was really cool on the other, not as favorite mastermind as you all. Somebody said, they're like, oh, I had this belief that changing beliefs was hard. And then I thought about when I found out there wasn't a Santa, right? And how that belief shifted pretty quickly. And I thought, oh, that's some good evidence in your evidence bank to think about, right? That belief changes don't have to be hard. It doesn't have to take a long time, right? She said it felt like beliefs have to take a long time and it's drudgery to get it to change, right? Like I'm clenching it and fighting it to change that belief. And so that's where like you're in that level 4 where you're open to hearing what other people have to say. And it's okay with you if you don't necessarily say your opinion. You're just saying, hey, this came up for me as we go through this. And you might clarify by saying, so what I heard you say was X, Y, and Z, right? So what we're going to, well, let me ask if there's any questions on those 4 levels, or Carrie, you've gone through this too, because this is stuff that we learned in our masters. If there's anything you want to add to those 4 levels.
It's been a minute since we've been through these, so I'm happy to refresh. Also, I just want to say that I was taking notes and wrote the word open as you said the word. So that was like,
Collective. Awesome. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say this statement, and it's good, unless you have a bunch of noise behind you, which I don't think many of you do, to go ahead and take yourself off of mute. And it's okay to have some silence in between me making the statement and us having a conversation about it. Now, keep in mind, try to think about linguistically. It's okay if you say, oh, what came up for me, right? Because that's not judgment. If I say, well, in my opinion, then I'm moving more towards the level 2 listening. It doesn't mean you don't have an opinion on it. And it's okay to move in between all of those, right? What I'm not available for is level 1, where you just want to come in and slam your opinion on everybody else, right? Like, but if we go anywhere between 2, 3, and 4, so I just did level 1 listening and said, we're not going there, right? Like, and so it's okay. So I'm going to make the statement, and it may or may not resonate with you, and it's okay, right? And it's okay to come back and say, like, but what I want to do is invite you to challenge yourself, to, even if you don't agree with it, to be open to listening to what the conversation brings about. But do share, do ask questions, do open up and provide some feedback. And we may or may not get through all the statements. So these were in relationship to manifestation, like how we manifest, right? So when we think about manifestation, today is, so the law of cause and effect, today is the effect of decisions we made in the past. And the past is locked, sealed, and gone.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Level 1. What does that
what
bring?
came to mind to me when you said that was realizing that if I were still working full time at Mayo Clinic, I wouldn't be sitting on a Zoom in the pool. And so just really thankful for the decisions that I've made that allow for this day to happen.
Right.
I think
Maybe I was listening, but I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to respond. Like,
Well, like,
because I don't really, that's not my experience, that
yeah,
the
so
past
show
is
what you're
gone.
saying. Yeah.
I go back and kind of unhook my energy from the past all the time. And it leads me to be able to change my future. So,
Well, from a like goal setting perspective, what comes up for me is that I think about what would future Carrie think today Carrie for?
Hmm.
mm,
And so that puts it a little bit more in the present for me than thinking about my past. I love Lachelle's example about the Mayo Clinic, but I think we can all look back at our past decisions and say, well, it's a good thing I divorced that guy because my life is awesome now, or like, hard decisions or good decisions that you've made too. Um, but then I consider the fact that sometimes we have our past and we have to, like Kathy said, cut that ties from the past because the past can only be responsible for so much at this point. We got to like take it on and move forward ourselves, you know?
well, the
Yeah.
way I see it is if something is kind of still, I'd say hooked from the past, there's something I need to learn from today. There's a reason why it's coming into my memory. There's maybe I'm about to repeat a pattern. And so if I go back and figure out what regret or what moment in the past is bothering me, and I go, what advice would I give that version of me in that moment? It's probably advice I need to hear right now. So I like to look into the past to help me navigate going forward. So.
Yeah. And what
And I
comes up?
love,
Oh, go ahead,
oh,
Michelle.
sorry. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say that I love listening to other people's perspectives on this. And I find that I still struggle a little bit with um, putting such abstract things into my mind, like childhood cancer or things like that, that I struggle to wrap my head around the cause and effect.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I can make it easy for myself to realize like, oh, that was a big decision that led to that, or that was a really good decision that led to that. But universal law, I believe, is all things are impacted by cause and effect. And so I'm still on that journey of learning.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, I have two things that come to mind. One, and as what you were saying, Lachelle, is as I've been going further in my journey and starting to think about, still with my faith base, but thinking about multiple lives, that this is the soul contract, right? Like, and so sometimes when I see some of that pain and suffering, in one way, I'm, you know, saying gratitude that they chose that to be able to, create the research, whatever it is. That's how I've kind of come to some terms with it. But
Mhm.
the universal law. And then when I think about past, for me, the actions of the past have been locked, sealed, and gone. But my interpretation of myself and the impact it had on me is not, like, to Kathy, like when you were talking about like it's layers for me. And so like having some really profound experiences where I went back into the past and looked at, as a small child, could I have been anything other than love? So how I interpreted what was said or the events that happened, I'm able to go and unwind those. And I almost think about tree roots, how like tree roots kind of go like this. It's almost like having to unwind that tree root to let go of that past interpretation. It reminds me of my sister, who's almost 11 years younger than me, and how we would talk about memories. And she's like, Debbie, that's not how it went. Your memory is wrong. And I said, well, let's talk about this, because when I was 20, you were 10. When I was 15, you were 5. So how you interpreted a memory and what you remembered about that is going to be very different than what I remember, because we were at different points in our journey, right? Like different points in our life. So when I think about the past as locked, sealed, and gone, it feels like, yes, the events that happened, and I can't necessarily go back and change the event, but I can change my interpretation or how I reacted to it to change then today and what's going forward?
Well, I, have an experience where I was having a regret um, related to my child on his Make-A-Wish trip. So I could talk about the child cancer thing in a minute, but I was having this regret, and this was several years ago, having this regret that I didn't speak up and say that I wanted to do I wanted to extend our trip because the space shuttle was delayed again. It'd been 5 days, and I went back and I did like a visualization where I spoke up to my ex and told him I wanted to stay, instead of what didn't happen is I didn't say anything. And then when I talked about it with my ex later, he goes, "Oh, you told me." So he actually, my energy work changed both of our memories of the event.
Well, that's interesting.
And then that kind of like, that hook of I don't speak up for myself, that belief was even more, disempowered.
Hmm.
So, like, as I'm like, I've experienced stuff where things change, or the memory around it changes, or more importantly, the energy around it changes. And
Well,
then
and
for childhood cancer, like, to address your comment, is having had the 3-year-old that I saw, struggle and suffer and everything. And kind of along with what I think Debbie was saying, is that both he and I and people around us are better for having had that experience. We're more connected with humans. We're more self-assured. We're better people because of it. And like, if I view like the only thing we could take with us really is like our feelings and our emotions, we kind of put it into one big vat on earth. What we're putting into earth as a result of it is love, acceptance, priorities changing, all the stuff that I would wish on, everyone.
Can I
And
ask a question, Kathy, to help me learn? So I totally understand, I grasp the part about like the cause and effect, like the illness caused you guys to have this new perspective and everything. But where I struggle is what caused the illness in the first place. And Debbie, I liked your answer with that, because I've thought about that soul contract. It's just hard for me to tie that into cause and effect for some reason. So
kind of like the way I look at it is kind of the way I interpret what Debbie said, was that kind of he came in to this earth, into this journey with this mission, and we all think our mission is what our ego tells us, but in reality, that our mission is kind of like what we're experiencing.
So so the cause was a pre-contractual like assignment before
a choice, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I
love that. Thank
you. Before incarnating.
Okay.
That's the way
that helps a lot.
And even with my stillborn, I I had this, in this maybe just making myself feel better, but I had this like a story in my head, was that baby just wanted to experience pure safety and nothing else. And that baby just wanted to experience the womb, and then maybe experiencing something else later when they chose it. But that's all the soul wanted on this journey. So that's kind of how I come to terms with it. And none of us know what's right or what's wrong, but this makes me feel better, so that's what I'm gonna do.
I like that a lot.
So I have a question for y'all. I have a friend who we always say is like the master of revisionist history, right? Like, we all experience something together. There's a general consensus about what that memory is or that event was. And somehow in her brain, she will reinvent it to fit some narrative that she's got at the moment, right? And out comes this like completely off the wall. And we're all like, we were there. Did you forget we were there? Like, how do you deal with someone? And I'll give you an example. We went to Cancun, 3 families with all of our kids. Her daughters were not 18, and it was a family friendly resort, but if you were 18 you got a different color band so you could drink. Well, she has twins. The one went first. They said, how old are you? She said 16. They said, cool. Gave her the kids bracelet. Her sister went. They said, how old are you? She said 18. They gave her the adult bracelet. Right. And then her parents like screamed at her, why would you tell them you were 16? Now you can't do blah 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 blah. But anyway, and we had a week of vacation together. Everything was fine. The one who got the child bracelet ended up also with a UTI. So she didn't get to go on the jet skis with the other kids. She didn't get to do the adult only dinner at this like fancy restaurant because you had to have an adult band to get into that restaurant. And in response, her mom made up the fact that she had a miserable time in Cancun because she had to hang out with the younger kids, which are my son and my nephew, who were both 14 at the time. She had one dinner with them the whole trip. It was the only time she hung out with them. But in my friend's mind, she really believes that her daughter had a miserable time because she was stuck hanging out with the little kids. And how do you talk to somebody like that? How do you like say like, I don't know where you're getting this from, but you're the only person who experienced it that way. Like, because
now,
even her daughter wouldn't say she was miserable. She had some miserable things like a UTI in the middle of her vacation. But her mom has made this story and is trying to convince others that that's true.
What comes to mind for me is if it's not affecting me, doesn't matter.
Ultimately, no, I guess it really doesn't matter. It's just so frustrating to hear it over, and she will tell anyone who will listen that Allie had a horrible time in Cancun. And then you ask Allie and she was like, no, it was awesome.
So if you could say anything to that woman and not have consequences, for her getting upset or whatever, and just pretend she's like this, reasonable, level-headed person.
Yeah.
What would you say to her?
I mean, what I have said to her is that, honey, you are revising history. That is not how that happens. Okay, well, you have said that, but what would you like to say?
She even said it to my son, and he was like, Kristen, I didn't hang out with her. I hung out with Logan and Rachel. Like, she wasn't stuck with me. I didn't even hang out with her. Right. So like I feel like I guess the reason it bothers me is because I feel like there's some blame. Like everyone was okay with her daughter getting stuck with the younger kids when that didn't actually happen.
Well, and it's an insult to your son, right?
Of course. And the fact that she says it to him and in front of him, and it's not just one time she said it, she has convinced herself that's the real story.
And
what do you wish you could say to her?
Oops. Sorry.
I mean, I just want to like
snap out of it,
shake her into reality. Yeah. Like, come on. Like what I really want to know, honestly, is do you really believe this? Or like, is this your way of like coping somehow? I mean, her and her husband fought the entire vacation, and I feel like it's her way of shifting. Like, she's projecting not talking about that
vacation vibes onto the daughter.
Right, because we get back from vacation and her post on Facebook is epic vacation to Cancun with friends and family and blah, blah, blah. Right. But then to us who were there, she's like, oh, Allie had a miserable time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, did you forget about the time that you and your husband fought all day in front of the kids? And that's why your daughter was actually miserable for part of that vacation? Because she thought you guys were going to get a divorce? Like, should we talk about that? But like, she will leave that out of the conversation. And it's just, and I think the other reason it frustrates me is because that's just one example of many, many, many with her. Pattern. Yeah.
This reminds me of like somebody else that I knew who's the psychologist would say that their filters were off. Like you would say something and they actually hear something completely different.
Yeah.
And one of my teenagers does this sometimes too. And because they'll hear an insult that was never there, right? Or something else. But like, and there are people who do experience the world differently because I think their filters are different than us sane people.
I think
Or like what Kathy was
I
saying.
think the significant part is that it frustrates you, and that's like in the folder of anger. And the purpose of anger is um, reminding you to take care of yourself, and maybe you need to communicate a boundary with her.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because when I consider like the law of vibration, right? Like when I think of raising my vibration to attract the type of people that you want around you, right? Like she was one of the people I was hoping would self-select out, right? Who just wasn't gonna be good with this new level of vibration. And that has
Mhm.
happened. They're actually moving to Florida.
Mhm.
Oh, the neighbor.
The neighbor. Yes.
That makes sense.
Can I just
Um,
say that it's freaking fun to listen to Pam talk about vibration? How far we've come in a year, my friend, right?
right?
I love it. So can I say something that is so fascinating when it comes to just like energetics and the quantum, is that this conversation is making me remind myself of a question that I have been pondering over the last several days that had nothing to do necessarily with what we're talking about, but more of like the big picture context. When I have friends that would tell me about something like what you just said, and my natural response is to do exactly what we've all done, is like, okay, well, have you thought about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then I've started to like, oh gosh, do I just listen? Do I say anything? Do I put my coach hat on? Do I need to just, because being with a coach friend is annoying as heck. So it's interesting. Like nobody cares what my inner child thinks, Lachelle. Like what so it's just kind of cool how this conversation that started in such a different way has brought up a question that I've had for the last several days. So anyway, just thank you for that.
Hmm.
Okay. Here's the next statement. See, this is what I love about generative conversation. You never know where it's going to go. The speed in which you manifest in your life is only limited by your ability to adjust to the speed of change. I'll put that in the chat because sometimes it helps to see it.
I think if manifesting requires inspired action, and you don't, then I guess the speed at which you produce those actions could be affected by the speed at which you are comfortable with change. Potentially.
It hasn't been my experience. Sometimes I manifest so quickly, I have to quickly. I'm like uncomfortable with the change because it manifested so quickly, and I have to, catch up. So I would say that that's maybe not always a direct relation.
So you're saying for you, sometimes you can manifest faster than you're comfortable with the change. So it's not really.
It might
related.
slow it down, but I wouldn't say that's the only factor, is all I would say.
Yeah.
Well, because the statement says it's only limited to how fast you can adjust to change. So I think
Right.
there's
Only
a
limited.
lot
Yeah.
of different things in there, such as like being open to what the manifestation is, being open to change in the first place. I have a lot of people who say like they want bigger, better, or oh, look at you, I can't believe you're doing all these things. Like, and I'm always think, well, if you want this, you can do it too. But it goes back to the inspired action that Pam talked about and just getting shit done sometimes, right? So, and being clear on what you want to do. Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just gonna say, like, this is such a great conversation, and I think that there's a couple things that have come up in my mind when I've listened to you. Um, Kathy, yours first is so cool that you know, manifest so quickly. And sometimes I wonder, like, why haven't I manifested this yet? And then I wonder, maybe I'm not ready for it. Like I'm not equipped yet to receive it. And so I got to dig a little deeper on that one. And then I also have had a tendency, right, to, I'm definitely a generator, and I can get caught up in masculine energy, and I, you know, have the Napoleon Hill burning desire, right, which sometimes can create the um, forcing energy rather than just to like sit and receive and wait. And so I think that when I've learned to just be, I find that things flow much faster than when I am trying to do and force. That's been my experience so far, but I'm still learning. So,
Well, and kind of what comes up to mind for me is then I want to keep practicing accepting change faster and faster. Right? Because if I look at the statement as true, then the faster I can adjust to change happening in my life, the faster I'm able to manifest and receive what's coming. Not what's coming, but what's here.
So I would ask the question, does there always have to be change to manifest? Like, does there always
Well,
have
how
to?
would you manifest the same
But I mean, like, but
thing?
like large change. Because sometimes I think like, oh, I want X, Y, Z, but my life is pretty comfortable right now. Do I really want to change? You know, so there's part of that, like you get easy in the comfortable. And sometimes when we start talking about change, it feels like big things, right? You have to quit your job or move across the country or whatever it is. So sometimes change is just an
Where
uncomfortable world word.
Yeah, because that is a belief that in order for you to get something, you have to change something, or something has to change.
or it
Mhm.
has to be big, right? I was talking to
Mhm.
somebody earlier today and they're like, oh, when we're talking about hard doesn't have to be like these big, huge mammoth things. It can be just like sometimes things are like it's hard for me to run a mile. But like that's not like shake the earth, break the earth open kind of hard that sometimes we attach to what hard means, right? So like change doesn't have to, it could be a minor thing where I moved my computer to a different spot. That's a change, right? Or I move where I normally sit at a meeting to a different place to have perspective. Like change doesn't have to be a burning bush, top of the let's grab the 10 commandments type of change, right? But then again, Kathy, as you're saying that too, it's almost like, does manifestation require change? For me, it could be just a change in the way I'm thinking about something too. I don't know. That's a good one.
If
I
you
think,
change the, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So if you change the wording a little bit, like your ability to adjust to the speed of change, to the amount of resistance you have to change, which is right. Like if you think about it in that way, I feel like it might make more sense to what Carrie's saying, right? The resistance to change versus like thinking about your ability to accept to the speed of change. That feels like you're expecting a big thing, but it could be those little less resistance. You might see those little just things perfected in your life instead of big sweeping changes as you resist less and less.
I think that one thing that came up for me is what Debbie had said, is just like thinking about it in terms of, all right, if here's a statement, am I accepting that it's true, or am I trying to argue it? Am I comparing it to my current belief system, or am I trying to learn something new? Um, and then it went down this rabbit hole of, well, where did this quote come from? And what are those person's credentials? Because if my kid just made it up, then that's different, right? And so it's just like, you know, because we see stuff on social media and we see stuff on the internet, and we see stuff in all of these places that I guess this conversation has taken me to how susceptible my beliefs are to information, and whether I decide that I'm going to accept it or whether I'm just going to automatically compare it to the current belief system that I have.
Yeah, what came up for me as you were talking, Lachelle, was I was listening to this podcast that was like, do what you feel is right, right? Like, and not even right or wrong, but like, do what you want to do with your business. Because they were like, all this shit's made up. Somebody somewhere made up shit, right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
and that was so freeing for me because they were also, I was thinking about this whole idea of, I don't say that my programs are, 24,997 because that doesn't flow off of my tongue, right? It's just 25K period, right? And so in some cases, like as you said that, I thought, oh, I wonder how much of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we perceive are made up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I just posted about that the other day, that, I can get really caught up in overthinking things like, oh, what are the trends? What are the influencers doing? All the things. And then it's like, how about instead of trying to do everything that everybody else is doing and watching other people, how about I just, turn to spirit, right? And have it guide me, because all trends had to start somewhere.
Yeah, why couldn't you be the one to start the trend that they're
Right?
looking at you for?
Right? I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm still accepting that, but I mean, it's just an interesting perspective.
Yeah, we used to live without houses, so
Yeah.
that was a trend.
Mhm.
Electricity and phones. And yeah, I look back and I think, oh, I remember when I used to type papers in college with typewriters. And I remember my senior year, them coming out with DOS. And I'm like, what the hell? This is more complicated than a typewriter, right? Like,
Mhm.
and we didn't have cell phones, right? Like, and so I look back and I think, if I were to live to be 100, like I really want to document some of this stuff because I think my grandsons, that would be interesting to them, right? Like interesting to think about my ex-husband's grandmother who was born in the 18th century, or I'm sorry, conceived in the 18th century, born in the 19th century, and died in the 20th century. Like all the things she saw in 100
Yeah.
years.
Like my great grandmother was born, she said, I was born in the time of horse and buggy, and I flew to Madagascar. Top that.
That's good. Yeah. So
That's
like
pretty cool.
that
Yeah.
speed of change, right? Yeah. So I want to throw this one out there. So I'm also a firm believer that we create problems, right? Like there aren't problems. We like, if you look at things, it's either, oh, okay, well, we need to go through this or whatever, right? So keep that in mind, but I'm quoting this. So the problems we create are like the brake pedal in the car. The more problems we create to slow us down is because we want to feel comfortable. This is because the speed in which the success is happening comes on too fast for us. And that's why looking at our subconscious and rewiring and reframing to make feeling uncomfortable comfortable is important.
That was really long.
It was-
You put that in the chat.
So if you think about driving a car and problems are speed bumps, right? Some are big, some are little. And we put the brake on because things are happening too fast. So we can slow down based on that, our ability to adjust to the speed of change. And how we work some of that is rewiring, as Kathy was saying earlier, unhooking from some things, messaging, that type of thing. So rewiring and reframing things so that we feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Like I'll push myself to do things, just like I was saying, I want to do things that help me feel more comfortable with change happening quickly. Like it used to take me months to make a decision. And now I'm like, decisions made. Some decisions, it might be a day or two because I want to think about it. But a lot of times it's like, okay, perfect.
I can say I'm definitely guilty of putting up my own speed bumps. when I get uncomfortable. Just thinking about in business, for example, you know, like we grew really, really fast and, you know, somebody was looking to purchase the business and everything was just like, and then we lost a really big client. I turned down the sale, like, and I was like, oh, wow, like maybe things aren't as good as I thought they were, right? And then we like put the brakes on a whole bunch of stuff to like revamp and make sure that if we got to that place, when we got back to that place of growing that fast and doing things so rapidly, we would be prepared, that the wheels wouldn't fall off when we got going too fast. So yeah, I would say I'm definitely guilty of the putting my own speed bumps in the way.
The statement reminded me of people who always have drama in their life. And it was a long statement. I think I need to read it again, but
I need to type it in the thing. I didn't type it.
also it takes me back to that first statement as well, where like our past creates some problems that we're dealing with today.
Well, it just says the effect. It doesn't say problems.
Okay.
Because it could be positive too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Carrie.
Oh, no, I'm just reading again now. I think I would make the statement that the more entrepreneurial that you are, the more comfortable you are being uncomfortable. Because there's nobody to come in and sweep you off your feet or solve your problems.
Yeah, and I would say that's, I mean, we work with startups, right? People who are typically entrepreneurial, and almost none of them are only ever going to own one business, right? They're going to build, sell, start another one, build, sell, start another one. And so we've seen that pattern. The first time somebody starts a business, it takes them a lot longer to make decisions. Everything is monumental. Everything is like, needs so much input and thought and making sure they get it right. And the second time they're like, yeah, it doesn't even matter. Do it how you want. Right? Like if you recommend that, we'll do that. Right? They just know like there are better things to spend their time and effort on sometimes. And if you hire the right people around you, you don't have to be in the middle of that. Let somebody else make those decisions. And
You talking about firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn?
yeah, I mean, it's similar, right? The way that you treat your firstborn child versus your subsequent children down the line and how.
Yeah, which then comes to mind for me that I want to put myself in situations where the unknown, where I'm in situations where the unknown is more frequent, because then I become more comfortable in the unknown.
Have you guys ever heard of the 100, I think it's 100-day failure challenge? I don't know if that's the right word for it, but basically it was in a book I was reading, and they talked about, they went out and asked somebody something that they felt they would say no to every day, one thing every day for 100 days, like walking up to a stranger and being like, hey, can I have $20? Right? Or walking up to somebody who works at a store and asking for something that they obviously can't get for you or do for you or whatever, but like getting comfortable with people telling you no and failing at what you're trying to accomplish. Like you're almost setting out to fail, but like after you do it for so long, you get comfortable with people telling you no, right? And then you don't mind asking for things, right? And by chance that the answer could be yes.
I heard a sales coach who once said, try to get to 100 no's. If you got
Yeah,
100,
so
same sort of thing. Yeah.
probably very similar. Yeah.
It makes me think about too, a conversation Kathy and I were having a while back, about how like the high jumpers, the long jumpers, all of those, like the gold medalist has to fail in order to win.
Yeah, that's what it was occurring to me watching the Olympics. Like he didn't consider himself that he won the gold until he failed at the at the high jump, or she, yeah. When she
Again,
failed, then,
can't talk
then
about the pole vaulters without thinking about the.
he won.
The guy who's
Yeah.
never going to struggle to find a date the rest of his life.
He might
That
have
guy?
failed the Olympics, but he won.
Because hundreds of thousands of people know he has big junk.
Uh-huh. What a time to rejoin, Lachelle. Okay, Debbie said big jump.
I've been listening the whole time. I just have a coaching call at 4, and so I knew that I needed to get out of the pool and into at least putting a shirt on. So no, this has been great though. I've been listening for sure. So
Well,
yeah.
and I'm going to throw the other statements in the chat because we are at like the last 2 minutes here. So that if you want to resonate on these, you are welcome to copy and paste these, but basically saying too, there's no limit to the instantaneousness of what you want. So like what Kathy was saying, or manifest in your life, and the speed in which it happens, that becoming aware, that awareness speeds this up exponentially. And the result you want right now, the thing that you want in life, will come to you as fast as you're willing to accept it.
Or faster.
Right.
You just get that belief that
Right.
you could say, I want this, and then ding dong.
Right.
And you have to quickly adjust.
Yep, absolutely. Well, you guys, thank you. I hope you found this beneficial. I love to get into like these kinds of conversations, and it gives us practice in listening and, kind of just going off of what's happening in the moment and being very present. Yeah, so thank you for that. And then I will see you next Thursday, 1 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
think I'm picking up my sisters from the airport at that time.
Okay.
I think they come out like 3:15 my time, and the meeting here is at 4, so I may not get back for that.
Okay. No
Just
worries.
FYI.
I'll still put a reminder out there, and we'll see you guys, those of you that can make it next Thursday.
Right.
Awesome.
Cool.
See you
Bye,
guys.
guys.